The 69th Annual International Astronautical Congress is underway in the Space Centre of Europe, Bremen in Germany. And we're here to cover it all. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Day 3 of IAC TV. I'm Sam Polly, ready to bring you all the very latest from this year's World Congress. First though, let's find out what's enabling the next generation to be in the front ranks of the industrial expansion, regardless of generation, gender or geography.
Small satellites and new space is opening up the world to young professionals like myself. I'm 26 and I am working on developing a small satellite payload, and I am on the southernmost point of Africa, and all of this is possible because it is so accessible.
Small satellites is a very nice launch pod to getting higher. For me, it's the great experience while studying, developing, designing the new satellite technology. And we personally have the pretty tough community of students and PhDs in our university, and I learned a lot from them.
It is not difficult to get funding because the development costs are not as great. The infrastructure required is not as great. It makes it all far more possible and easier. Because it is so much cheaper and easier to develop satellites nowadays and so much more accessible, we don't have to mitigate those risks by going back to old ways. We can try new things and optimize and improve.
Collaborating with the other countries, with the other brilliant minds from all over the world is very nice collaboration, and we need to learn from each other. We need to meet each other, to speak to each other, to share our ideas with each other. And only in this case we can make a huge progress.
We live in an information era. We're bombarded with information, and providing that information to different parties and to different people all across the world can really help stimulate that diversity and the growth and new things, making new things happen in the space world.
NASA has always been a leader in space exploration. Well, let's hear now where they are and what they're up to and what they have in mind for the future. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by Jim Bridenstine from NASA. Jim, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Sam. It's great to be here.
Well, this week is not only an important week because it's IAC, but it's also a very special week for NASA because it's your 60th anniversary. You must be feeling really pleased about that.
It is. NASA is now 60 years old as of just a few days ago. We got to celebrate it right here at the IAC. Had a wonderful time doing so, and you think back at the history of what NASA is and what NASA has done, going back to the Apollo era and putting people on the surface of the moon, 6 missions, 12 different people walked on the surface of the moon, an amazing achievement. But what we're doing today is we're working really hard to make it international, to get all of our international partners to collaborate on new and even more amazing, stunning achievements. So it's wonderful to be here to celebrate our history and to think about what the future holds.
So is that your main focus then, collaboration? And if so, why is it so important?
So collaboration is a main focus, but really my charge from the President under Space Policy Directive 1 is to get to the moon. And when he said he wants to go to the moon, he said he wants to go to the moon sustainably. In other words, we're not going to leave flags and footprints and come home not to go back for another 50 years. He wants to create an architecture where we can go back and forth to the surface of the moon over and over and over again. The only way we can make that happen, and I think this is the important reason it's so critical that we have international collaboration, we have to have international partners. We cannot do this alone. So we need international collaborators and we need commercial partners, which is something that in many cases didn't even exist 5 or 10 years ago. We now have partners in the commercial sphere that can sell us services and capabilities without NASA purchasing, owning, and operating systems. So between our international partners and commercial operations, I think that achieving a sustainable architecture to the moon is a very real possibility soon.
And as you said, collaboration is vital. How important is the IAC annual event in providing that?
This is an amazing venue, and the reason it's so amazing is because there's so many young folks here that are enthusiastic, and there's government officials here that are seeing how enthusiastic the young community is, not just about space exploration, but international collaboration and going further than we've ever gone before. So to be here at this venue with all of these young and inspired, enthusiastic folks, to be with their elected representatives from various governments around the world and the heads of all the space agencies in one spot, this is really a forum that is really, it's unlike any other. And it gives us an opportunity to build that coalition necessary to accomplish these big objectives.
And of course, the baton is going to be handed over to you because IAC 2019 is in DC next year.
Yes.
What are your hopes for that?
It's, that's a big order because this has been an amazing IAC. Right here in Bremen, Germany, there's 6,300 registrants. If you can imagine, that's a lot of people descending on one venue for the purpose of collaborating on space activity. Jean-Yves has charged us next year, when it's in Washington, D.C., to have 10,000 people show up. Now, we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. I think we can achieve that milestone, and we need everybody who's watching this to sign up. We need them to come. But I guarantee that if you come, it will be worth it. You will learn a lot, and certainly it will be an opportunity to collaborate and talk to so many different folks from all around the world that are enthusiastic about activities in space.
Jim, that sounds fantastic. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Enjoy the rest of the Congress and we'll see you next year.
Okay, thank you.
Joining me now are Danielle Ritchie and Kathleen Coder, both from Lockheed Martin Space. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thanks, Sam.
Danielle, I wonder if first of all you could start by telling us what Diversity Day at IAC is.
Diversity Day at IAC is amazing. It celebrates the 3 Gs, or the principles, the foundation of IAF's initiatives. It's generational, gender, and geographic diversity. We celebrate these 3 Gs through multiple events that celebrate each of the successes from different partners, organizations, and people that have really encompassed and embodied these principles.
And Kathleen, are there any special activities that will be happening? How will the day unfold?
So we actually started out the day earlier today with a diversity breakfast. We had some amazing talks that actually touched each of the 3G topics and kind of explained what is being done around the world and by some of the IAF member organizations on the topics of gender, geographic, and generational diversity.
Well, diversity is all about teamwork, isn't it?
It is, and so the breakfast was actually a really great experience. Danielle and I got to say a few remarks and had a lot of fun with that. There's also a luncheon later today where the Diversity Award is being given out to the Space Generation Advisory Council. And then there's actually a great networking event this afternoon with a roundtable with different generations of folks.
Danielle, why do you think that diversity is crucial to the future of space exploration?
I think diversity is really important and critical to our success in space exploration. It's really showing younger children who they are so that we can have the first woman on the moon, we can have the first person on Mars, and really allow them to see themselves in the future so that they grow into those fields and expand their careers and their minds.
Kathleen, those goals that Danielle outlined, do you think they're possible in the near future?
I think they are, especially lately with a lot more diversity initiatives occurring. You see a lot more companies like Lockheed Martin taking on the goals of diversity and inclusion. You see programs that the United Nations is trying to do. It's part of one of their key principles now, those sustainability goals, to actually include diversity and women in particular within the space sector. So we heard a talk this morning about one of their initiatives from the UNUSA. So yeah, I think they are achievable. It may still take a little time, but a potential goal for the future.
Fantastic. And for anyone that's watching and is interested, are there any resources that are out there that they can find out more, get involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a lot of resources for anybody that wants to be more involved with diversity, especially at IAC. It's iafastro.org, and they can see all the committees that they're able to participate in. There's a great wealth of information on that website for anybody who really wants to participate in diversity.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us today, and we wish you the very best of success for Diversity Day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam.
It's official, the Global Conference on Space for Emerging Countries is taking place next year in Marrakesh in Morocco. But how significant is this for the region? Let's find out.
The current IAF framework is the Global Innovation Agenda, 2016 to 2019. And there's two elements in there that speaks to new communities. The one is reaching out to emerging countries, and the second is 3G diversity, which is geography, gender, and generation. And so, in that respect, we are now hosting for the first time the Global Conference on Space for Emerging Countries, which is going to take place in Marrakesh. The theme is bridging the space divide, the disconnect between what emerging countries are doing and developed countries are doing. The focus for developing countries at the moment is mainly on addressing socio-economic, environmental issues, whereas if you look at developed nations, it's space exploration, which is very different agenda and aspirations.
Well, I think it is important because we are living in a very interesting moment in space where this is not a confined area anymore, and this is more spreading in all over the life of the citizens, of the companies, of the states. And so this is a business for everybody. This is an interest for everybody, and we believe that emerging countries should take benefit of all the space applications which are emerging now to quicken their development.
From the point of view of Morocco, I think this is an opportunity for us first to develop space activities in the country, to be in contact with emerging countries and to learn from their expertise, and also to serve as a focal point for the African countries and also for other regions of the world to start cooperation and in space activities and to share good practices in this field and to support countries that are initiating space activities. We are very excited to host this conference, and we're very excited to be in contact with major actors in space activities, and we hope that that will be an opportunity to start a journey on how to develop space for emerging countries.
I don't want to see this as a once-off event. We want to ensure that that conference feeds into future conferences, and there should be follow-on global conferences on space for emerging countries as well.
Organisations all around the world are pushing the boundaries of space exploration every day. Let's take an in-depth look into some of those.
The work we do here enables technologies for deep space missions. We can make satellites work more efficient and more compact.
Our research helps us communicate and keep the world connected, even during natural disasters.
With the data we are analyzing here, we are increasing the knowledge of our solar system.
Sending an experiment above the Earth atmosphere, that's just something that not everyone can do.
it just not stays in theory or just in a concept, but actually we are able to test it. It's just really excited to see things working.
Doing a space mission is a highly interdisciplinary undertaking. We are dealing with very complex systems. To be successful, you really have to cover all relevant disciplines. That's why we joined forces and founded the Space Research Center here at the Bundeswehr University in Munich. The Bundeswehr University in Munich trains officers of the German military, but on the other side, we are a research university doing research for the space agencies, for industry all over the world, working on the details, on technical details, but still having in mind the whole mission. Only then we can find local optimal solution to have a working space mission and a spacecraft.
This is the Library Structure Lab for the studies of aerospace engineering. FLOMIS is a student team currently involving 60 students to provide so-called FLOMIS module. This FLOMIS module can be installed into sounding rockets, measuring strain or flight loads during the ascent of the rocket. We are participating in the program so-called Rexus-Bexus. We have 10 spaces on 2 rockets. FLOMIS is just a small part of a huge experiment called Miriam 2 launch to simulate the entry of the Mars atmosphere.
In this lab we do space propulsion and particular electrical propulsion. We work on micronewton to millinewton systems. An example for a millinewton system is a so-called gridded ion thruster. Heavy gas like xenon is ionized by radio frequency waves, and then we use grids with high voltage to extract ions or electrons. Another system for micronewton generation is based on vacuum arc principle. Here we have a solid propellant which we evaporate using an electric arc, and this is used for communication in space to position satellites very precisely.
In the navigation lab, we're working mainly in global navigation satellite systems. Currently, we're working in the design of Galileo's second-generation signals, which will offer a stronger service in terms of accuracy and reliability. GNSS cannot give always centimeter accuracy for all the application, so we have added more sensors to offer integrity. One of these sensors is LiDAR. One of the examples of this sensor in space applications is autonomous navigation about small bodies. The UAV is supposed to fly around a small body using the algorithms that have been developed in the Institute.
We are the Space Communications Lab. We can communicate in all frequency bands to all the possible satellites within our view or sight or even beyond. We have the equipment and the personnel to perform true over-the-air testing for satellite algorithms, equipment, and technology. We, the Space Communications Lab, were part of a very huge project. Our job was to find out how does your transmitted signal change, or is it manipulated by our atmosphere when it's received at the International Space Station. The antennas were successfully installed on the International Space Station, and we are proud to be part of such a huge project.
At the Space Technology Lab, we are looking into mission analysis of spacecraft design and design of experiments, trying to improve subsystems of spacecrafts. In our group, we are involved in the radio science experiments, which are flying on different interplanetary spacecraft.
The radio science experiment on the Rosetta spacecraft is using the ground station on Earth and the communication system on the spacecraft itself. With our measurements, it was the first time we were able to directly measure the mass loss during the perihelion. With the New Horizons flyby in 2015, we were involved in the measurement of the Pluto system mass and also of the individual masses of Pluto and Charon. It's great to teach here at the University of the Bundeswehr. We can use the knowledge we are gaining to teach real-life projects.
The Bundeswehr University provides a huge amount of sports activities, soccer or basketball or volleyball.
The university is very family-friendly environment, which is great for me and my little daughter.
The university creates a very culturally rich environment. Within our space communications group, we have 6 different nationalities from all over the world.
The institute gives me the opportunity to work in different research projects while doing my PhD and earning a normal salary.
What I like here at the university is the easy way for cooperation. This is very beneficial for producing results, producing science, providing services to Earth.
Andoya Spaceport has a good location for a number of reasons. Number one, due to the fact that it is on an island, open waters towards the north, direct injection possibility for polar orbits. Number two, the heritage of Andoya Spaceport. Through the past activities in sounding rockets, there are people who know the operations overall. And third, but not least, is the infrastructure. Andoya Spaceport is close to an airport, but also telemetry ground station like in Svalbard. Europe needs its own spaceport to launch satellites. For institutional missions, we have French Guiana, our European institutional spaceport, but overall, satellites tend to become more and more small, and in this sense, this is a huge commercial opportunity, and the market will drive its success.
Increased commercialization of technology and the way we approach the different space programs is a very, very important driver in what is now called new space. We are seeing development of new space systems, new technology, smaller satellites, newer and smaller and cheaper space launchers, which are all drivers in this domain. New space is not something that will replace the traditional space technology or space markets, but it's really complementary. Launch of small satellites is a challenge currently. Normally you would have to piggyback on a larger satellite and be tied to that particular launch into a particular orbit, which poses certain restrictions on how you could actually use your satellites effectively. Worldwide, there is actually a shortage in terms of launch capacity. You can see that in commercial telecom, where you have satellites sitting on the shelf for maybe 1 or 2 years. So there are a lot of development programs for small and micro launchers. That is needed in order to be able to select both your orbit and also your launch date. Andoya is a very interesting site for creating a spaceport, which would really be a European point for access to space for small launchers and the launch of microsatellites. Andoya and Norway has some very favorable geographical features. It's far north, you're able to launch directly into polar orbits. There is a large infrastructure already, there's a large airbase there, and we have been shooting sounding rockets since the 60s in this location. So there are a lot of infrastructure, a lot of competence and knowledge tied to this.
The prosperity of space is linked to the use of space application in our daily life. Mobile phones, positioning systems, we need it for maritime transportation systems, air transportation systems. Now the prosperity is directly linked to this evolution, and any modern society needs space applications more and more. Now for the region of Andoya, it is linked to direct and indirect activities around the spaceport.
Space technology is vital to security, sustainability and economic efficiency in today's society, and this is not least true for Norway. Satellites are of critical importance for the stewardship of our vast maritime areas. It enables important Norwegian industries such as fisheries, offshore oil activity and maritime transport. We're currently making an assessment of the potential for an investment in a satellite launch site at Andøya, and this is because the Norwegian government wishes to do our part to facilitate a commercially viable development of such a satellite launch site.
Norway spends approximately 100 million euros on different programs in ESA and EU every year on space. It's increasing, and Norway participates in many ESA programs as well as EU programs. So space industry is becoming more and more important in Norway. New space is emerging, and there are a lot of satellites expected to be launched in the coming years. It's increasing year by year, and the need for launch capacity is also increasing. So I'm confident that Andøya Spaceport will be an important part of European space industry in the future.
The way people look at accessing space is changing pretty quickly. The difference now is that in 6 months you might start getting data from your first test satellite, and within a couple years you could be looking at getting full global coverage. So you're talking about speeds that are much, much different, and without having to build up your own satellite program in the process. Spire is a space-based data company that uses data from space to solve problems on Earth. We track ships, planes, and weather, all using our satellites, and then provide it to our clients through an API. Spire is working with the European Space Agency to develop what we call our Space as a Service program. That means we have extra space in our spacecraft to put other payloads in there. So companies or universities or government agencies, they can get their sensor into space, deployed into orbit, tested, and start getting data back.
We at ESA ARTES program, we saw a gap for what we call space mission provider, and the whole idea of Pioneer is for those space mission providers is to be like a one-stop shop for the in-orbit demonstration with reasonable cost and reasonable schedule. The main goal of the Pioneer program is to stimulate innovation in space industry through those space mission providers like Spire. What is inspiring this program is that there is a vast opportunity to create new solutions and new ideas, and to find out how we could do affordable and quick access to space with European industry. And that is very much rewarding, and we are proud to help European industry to do so.
We've built a rock-solid satellite bus that's able to take in all new payloads, and so we can just sort of slot one in and get it up on the next launch to orbit. So we've got a whole slew of launch slots ready to go. They just sort of hop on the bus and we put them in space. Small satellites like ours are kind of leading the way in terms of number of satellites put in orbit. Due to that, they're becoming a very reliable way of getting data down. It's definitely changed the way people interact with orbit to say that orbit is now a service, and the data that comes from orbit is now a service.
New space is where science, engineering, and business collide. This offers very exciting opportunities for developing novel technologies. Space has always been the game changer for our planet. It's actually very exciting to work with such innovative technology. No 2 days are similar. Challenges are very often complex and multidisciplinary. A can-do attitude and also teamwork are key to success.
Spire is bridging that gap, using space-based technologies to make life better on Earth, to save lives, to conserve resources, to protect our planet. In a short time, Spire has managed to build an entire satellite constellation that can monitor Earth 24/7 over anywhere on the planet. Given this dedication to exponential growth, imagine what Spire will be in 5 years, in 25 years. And that's what inspires me about this work. It's where Spire has been and how much it's bound to accomplish.
Spire have established and demonstrated a successful track record of building and launching small satellites with an impressive facility, and also Spire showed a very open and transparent approach, and we see that as a partnership with ISA, where ISA can bring its long experience and expertise in space for helping Spire developing their space business and commercial business.
Spire is going to be the company that provides that plug for people. That will contain a whole bunch of customer payloads. So coming to us with an idea, and then we come to you with an API at the end. And it's a pretty simple, almost data as a service transaction, rather than a big, huge spin up your own space program. And hopefully we're going to be doing a whole bunch of very, very interesting payloads for other people that expand what businesses have available to them in terms of data sets.
Surrey Space Centre really has pioneered small satellites for science, for communications and Earth observation, and indeed now navigation.
We are investigating missions where we are trying to address today's problems in a way affordable for society.
There's a growing problem in space with debris. Surrey Space Centre is leading the way with active debris removal demonstrations.
We support the next generation of engineers. We have to be creative and we have to sustain innovation in space.
The Surrey Space Centre was formed in the late 70s here at the University of Surrey in the UK, and the initial idea was to try to explore cost-effective technologies for space activities.
We had a small team of researchers who got together and built our first satellite, USAT-1, the first satellite launch in 1981. That was essentially the formation, the beginning of the Surrey Space Centre. Step by step, the Space Centre grew with research students and research staff focusing on how we could use commercial off-the-shelf components to build small but very capable and inexpensive microsatellites.
Today we have continued along that path to produce cost-effective technologies and cost-effective answers to new problems. The Surrey Space Centre has a capability to be able to put together missions from the early concept design down to building the hardware, then launching and operating in space and using the data for applications useful for the community.
We work on a whole variety of projects at the SSC, and this can be anything from radiation detectors throughout things like deployable optics. If you can think about a project that might be interesting for space, we're probably working on it.
Here at the Space Centre we can tackle a range of projects, from the very small student projects up to our largest projects have a budget of around, let's say, 15 million. What we try to do throughout our projects is to find different ways in a cost-effective manner to resolve a particular issue or a particular problem.
Space debris represents a hazard to all users of space. Removed debris is going to be the first time that there's been an attempt to demonstrate active debris removal in orbit.
Our mission, Remove Debris, that is sponsored by the European Community and also with partners around Europe, is aiming to demonstrate technologies that can be used to remove the most dangerous debris that are currently orbiting around the Earth.
The Remove Debris project consists of one large mothercraft that houses all of the experiments on board, and one by one the mothercraft will deploy the experiments and will operate the experiments in space, demonstrating capture, vision-based navigation and deorbiting techniques. We're going to simulate debris by use of a CubeSat, which will be ejected from the mothership, and we're going to use the camera to actually track the object and see how it moves. Next we have a net experiment. Again, we're going to deploy some debris, then the mothership will catch the debris, and all of this will be filmed using supervision cameras. Next we have the harpoon experiment. We're actually going to roll out a target and then fire a harpoon into the target. And the target's made to replicate the skin of a spacecraft which is already in space. Lastly, we're going to deploy the drag sail, and we're going to be able to track, remove debris, the mothership, and we'll be able to see the change in its velocity and its attitude as it comes down as a result of deploying the drag sail. The Surrey Space Centre's role in remove debris is we are the consortium managers, but also we deliver several parts of the mission itself. So the CubeSats, the drag sail, and also part of the Harpoon target assembly.
What we hope to be able to demonstrate is that this is actually possible to use these cost-effective technologies in order to do this for real and then going to capture real pieces of debris. The way we work at our projects is collaboration with other companies, research institutes around the world, like for example Airbus. Our main partner is the company SSTL that was actually formed within the Surrey Space Centre.
The Surrey Space Centre and SSTL really is an exemplar of academic and commercial synergy. The Space Centre undertakes long-term research into ideas, and when they are useful, then the company can pick up those ideas and put them into commercial missions.
As a university, it's really important to build these connections. It can provide students with a real novel opportunity to work firsthand with larger scale space organisations.
The Space Centre work with ESA, NASA, UKSA because they work so well together from beginning to end of a project. It gets you involved in the entire process.
Our MSc students get the opportunity to interact with space engineers, and they derive the outcomes of their project based on the niche requirements of the space industry. Our postgraduate researchers, they also get the opportunity to work on real space missions, so they see how mission concepts evolve.
Surrey Space Centre is a very great place to work in. We are able to work on satellites and to have very good top facilities for the job. I believe you can really grow and find your right path in the space career.
So the next exciting thing in space is going to be in-orbit assembly. We have a project running between SSTL and the Space Centre to demonstrate that in the next couple of years.
Surrey Space Centre is at the core of the future of space science because we're actually doing things in the space environment now, developing inflatable structures for space, deployable items for space.
Here at the Space Centre, we help producing the technologies that will be useful for tomorrow, and at the same time we also help forming the future workforce that is necessary in years to come.
Achieving highly reliable, affordable access to space is the key for the future of space exploration. Let's find out now what SpaceX has been able to accomplish with the development of reusability.
So obviously you need to get stuff into orbit and you need to get it to other planets from there. Transporting it to orbit cheap is number one thing, but if you're not reliable at the same time, it doesn't help you to be cheap if you keep doing it over and over and fail along the way. Reliability and being affordable is just the key thing to foster space travel and to do space exploration more than what we do today. So when you look at things we have in our lives like ships, airplanes, cars, we tend to use them more than once, and that's what makes them cheap and affordable basically. Rockets logically should function similar to airplanes, where you just use them over and over again and lower the cost of operation in the long term. Reusability had an enormous impact on SpaceX operations. It enabled us to launch our customers at the number and the rate we needed to. We were producing rockets and we had a decent launch rate. However, in the last 2 years we had 34 launches. That's 2017 and 2018 up to now, and that is just phenomenal, more than what we had before. And what enables it is basically that we could refly first stages again, and all we had to do is build second stages and fairings.
Can you imagine what it takes to be able to live and work in the International Space Station, on the Moon or Mars? Well, next we find out why research under space conditions is crucial for the demands of living and working in space.
Research under space conditions is very important
because our life here on Earth is dominated by gravity, right? If I try to jump, I immediately come back. And this means that many subtle physical phenomena which are important are obscured by this effect of gravity. So going to ISS or here under our drop tower, we can remove this effect and then observe things that are otherwise obscure. Once we understand them, let's say surface tension effects, then with this we can develop new ideas to be used in space but also on Earth. Living in the ISS, Moon and Mars is complicated enough, or will be complicated enough, let alone do science there. So first of all, I think when you talk to astronauts and people at the ISS, they will tell you having space is important, and then that you have all the tools that you would like to use. I mean, if you think about the ISS, there's a lot of research going on there, but if it were built right now, they would build it in a very different way, where you have easier access to the experiments, more instrumentation and so on. Yeah, team dynamics are totally influenced by the environment, essentially. You are in a closed room, you have the feeling you are working all the time. It doesn't matter if you are working, eating, or taking a nap. You are seeing your colleagues around all the time, and I think that's the biggest challenge. Team dynamics occupies everything and is controlled by the environment. So I think a design of a habitat where people feel comfortable, can retreat from the others for some time, that will be key to work well, and that you can disconnect from work. Yeah. So our intention when we designed this session was first to highlight how important it is to have the ISS to advance science and to benefit here in Earth. That was the main purpose. And the second purpose is to say, let's go out there and do this together. There are so many exciting things we are to discover, and so many things that will come back here to Earth. So that's what we wanted to do. That was our main purpose above all, is to motivate people for exploration.
Gravity has fascinated us for centuries, and now we're looking into more and more ways of how to sense, measure, and characterize it.
Knowing how to sense gravity is very important. It impacts our daily life. So if you think of earthquakes, for example, if you think of groundwater levels, they can be sensed from space, the gravity associated with this, which is fantastic. So it's not just something which is pure academic research, but it impacts our daily life. So therefore it's very important. And the second aspect is that it's very fundamental aspect of nature, and therefore it's coupled to the human curiosity. So we are curious and we want to understand more and more and more. There are two types of challenges. The first one is for fundamental physics missions. You want to measure very precisely the distance of spacecraft. The spacecraft are apart by 2.5 million kilometers for the LISA mission. And you have to measure the distance variation to about 10 picometers, which is an incredible requirement because 10 picometers is around the size of a helium atom. So you're measuring distance variations in the size of a helium atom over distances of 2.5 million kilometers. That's a challenge, isn't it? And the other challenge is that we want to have GPS receivers placed on very small satellites. We are working on Delphi PQ, a pocket cube satellite which has GPS receivers, and we want to have many of those satellites in the future to be able to have a full coverage of the gravity field of the Earth. Spaceflight is a very important aspect that is not only something for the future, we are using it already in our daily lives. And I think this will become more and more important. So already now we cannot do without space. In the future, it will be even nested more fundamentally into the fabrics of our society.
Well, that's all for us for today, but we'll be back tomorrow with more essential coverage from the Congress. Don't forget you can watch throughout the conference centre, in your hotel room, on YouTube, and through the Congress app. Join us again tomorrow. Thanks for watching.